So we left off yesterday talking about Rostow, and we're going to pick up today with Immanuel Wallerstein's model. And we talked about this. This is the world systems theory, which in short is globalization. We read an article in class about the Wallerstein model, and it gives some great examples of products that we have on the shelves of Walmart that have just been produced in many different parts of the world. Even one item oftentimes has parts from all over the world. They give an example in the article of auto engines that are made with German parts that are built in Romania, then shipped to Brazil to be installed in Jettas, which are sold in Chile. And it just is an example of the fact that most of the stuff we have was manufactured or put together from many different parts of the world. And so in this world systems theory, Wallerstein divided the world into two types of countries: core countries and periphery countries. And basically his idea is that the core countries, these are the wealthy countries. I don't know if you remember the picture that we looked at in class where it showed you like a picture of the top of the globe, and then it drew a circle around the countries. If you're looking at the top of the globe, it drew a circle around the countries north of the equator, and those are generally the core countries. And Wallerstein said that the core countries get wealthy off of the periphery countries, which tend to be south of the core countries and south of the equator. And so he basically said that the core countries will buy raw materials from the periphery countries, like cotton or steel or whatever. They will then manufacture them into textiles or cars or whatnot, and then sell them back to the periphery countries. And so this is kind of a pessimistic view, but his argument was that the core countries win in this model, and the periphery countries remain very poor. Later on, they added the semi-periphery countries to this model, and this type of country could either be one that has an intermediate level of development, or they are simply located geographically between a core country and a periphery country. So examples of this would be like Brazil or China, Mexico, India. And so semi-periphery is, like I said, either countries that have a medium level of development, or they are literally located between core and periphery countries. Okay, so we looked at two different models for development, and those are the self-sufficiency model and the international trade model. And interestingly, we used India as an example for both. But they initially began development by pursuing the path of self-sufficiency. And basically what this means is that they shut out foreign competition, they discourage foreign ownership of businesses, and they do so either by passing tariff laws, which will artificially increase the price of imports, which are usually cheaper than domestic goods. And they also pass all kinds of regulations that would make it really difficult for foreign businesses to set up shop in India, which was our example. And so basically the goal of the self-sufficiency model is to protect domestic production. We said that India experienced some modest growth under this model, but overall there wasn't a significant amount of development. That is, until they switched to the international trade model. And this is where countries find whatever good or resource that they have that they can make money on, and then they use that, they sell it all over the place to other countries, they sell it at home, and they use the money they make off of that one or two goods or services, and then they use that to finance development. So in the international trade model, they eliminate tariffs or they reduce them significantly. They get rid of all regulations. They allow foreign businesses to come set up shop. They allow their own goods, to be sold everywhere. And basically they open their borders economically speaking. And so the goal here is to rapidly develop by gaining or by implementing foreign trade. So India is actually our example of a country that switched from the self-sufficiency model to the international trade model. And so they experienced modest growth under the self-sufficiency model, but when they started reducing tariffs and getting rid of regulations, they experienced significant growth. And India specifically, invited foreign companies to set up factories. They reduced or eliminated tariffs, and they got rid of the government monopolies on communication and insurance and other major industries and allowed those to be owned privately. All right, so we also talked in this chapter about financing the development of LDCs, or less developed countries. Two of the ways that was done was, number one, through foreign direct investment by corporations. And so this is basically a financial investment that is made by a foreign country in the economy of another country. And so, in short, businesses decide that it would be profitable for them to take some of their profits, take some of their money, and then invest it or finance development in another country. And then once that industry or that factory takes off, they will get their money back, and hopefully even more. This type of investment has increased rapidly since the 1990s. Another way that development has been increased or financed in LDCs is through loans. We talked about the World Bank, which lends money so that countries can reform public administration and legal institutions. If there's like fraudulent city governments or things like that, it will send money to help make those government institutions or legal institutions less fraudulent. They also provide social services that are typically project-based. So I think I showed a picture in class of some of the World Bank funds going to help build a road. And so typically the World Bank finances infrastructure. So like roads, canals, things that are built to strengthen the infrastructure of a society. We also talked about the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and this more broadly helps countries. So like if Greece has an economic crash and their currency is suddenly worthless, the International Monetary Fund will go there, send money to help try to stabilize the economy and stabilize the currency. They also help rebuild national reserves. And typically they stabilize the currency by stabilizing exchange rates and also helping them pay for imports. And in doing so, a lot of times that can stabilize an economy. I gave Greece an example, even though they use the euro now, they don't have their own separate currency. The problem with this, of course, is that oftentimes these countries that borrow money cannot pay back their loans. And so the World Bank or the IMF have to get involved and impose regulations on them to help them pay back their loan. Okay, so we looked at two ways to deal with an economic downturn. Countries will either take one of the two following paths. We talked about stimulus and austerity. And so stimulus spending is when a government spends more money than it has. It either goes into debt or it prints money and causes inflation, but they spend money that is not rightfully there in order to stimulate the economy. We talked about Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He did this during the Great Depression. And basically he spent money that we did not have in order to start public works projects so that people could work again. One major problem of the Great Depression is that there was mass unemployment. And so he spent money that the United States did not have so that he could provide public works projects so people could be employed. The second measure is austerity. And this is when the government cuts spending dramatically. So like all of the excess things that they're spending money on, they cut funding to that and they reduce taxes. And the theory behind that is that with income taxes reduced, people will spend more money because they'll have more money in their check, and then they will stimulate the economy that way. And so both measures have been used. A lot of times, if there are LDCs that can't pay back their loans, the World Bank will impose austerity measures on them. And so they'll say, all right, you need to cut your spending, you need to pay back this loan, lower taxes, and then, you'll stimulate the economy. All right, that is all today. And I hope you have a great day. And I love you and I miss you greatly.